This is the Pipkin and Turnbull Show. This is actually episode number 30 for us.
Oh
So,
wow.
yeah. So, this coming to you at November 19th, 2020. Got an awesome show ahead of us. So, Jamie, tell us what we are talking about today.
All right, man. So today we're gonna take a look at the AFC South division. We're gonna break down who we think could be the division winner and possible wild cards after that. And then the NBA. We're back with the NBA. The draft was last night, and I think it continues tonight, if I'm not mistaken. But a lot of trades have been going on in the NBA this past week, and we will look at some of the biggest changes. And then we'll break down the rest of the show, the best and the worst, and things we saw, and then kind of preview some upcoming matchups that we feel that you guys might enjoy this weekend. So, with that said, the AFC South division. To me, I think this is one of the weaker divisions this year. I thought it was going to be one of the tougher ones at the beginning of the year, but it's crazy how that can like flip on you, as the season goes on. What was a pretty tough division season 4 isn't necessarily the next season. You've got Tennessee and Indy at 6-3. Tennessee, I figured, they were in the AFC Championship last year, and so I kind of figured they'd be a little better than what they have been this year. Definitely relying on Henry. And Indy, I'm surprised is actually at 6-3. Rivers is having an okay year. 11 touchdowns, 7
Yeah.
interceptions, which is low for him. He usually throws a lot more interceptions by this time. But the I think the surprise in this division is Houston for me at 2-7. Just I don't think anybody last season after they got to the divisional round in the playoffs and like put the first half of the that game against Kansas City. I don't think anybody thought they would be 2-7 at this point this year. And I think that's just a lack of leadership in the front office. Not necessarily on the players, but um, that's I can see for me personally, I can see one team getting in the playoffs out of this division, and that's going to be the division winner. This is just it's just not a really tough division. I feel
Right.
like anybody can beat them. I feel like they're they're just kind of there this year. But like Tennessee is a tough team. So like, don't get me because Ryan Tannehill's having a good year. He's got 2,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Like that's nothing to laugh at. And Derrick Henry is top two in the league when it comes to running backs. But that's really it. Receiving wise, they got AJ Brown. He's got 478 yards, 6 touchdowns. Like that's really it for him. And so I feel like they need to. They're a couple pieces away. I feel at this point, and so, but I mean, what 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 readings do you get from this division?
Yeah. Yeah. Two of the teams in this division that you were talking about, especially this year, would be the hardest reads that I have on teams is probably like you were saying Tennessee and Indianapolis. It's interesting because the AFC South last year. I mean, if we could have had the situation to where we would have had an all AFC South championship. And
Yeah,
that's how I mean. You look at last year comparatively to this year. It's hard for me to I think I understand Houston. Tennessee is the hardest team for me to predict what they will do every week because I feel
yeah,
like you get so many different performances from them
mm,
every week. The one thing that we do know, and the thing that you mentioned is Tennessee's. I think really struggle offensively if they can't get Derrick Henry running. more so than I think other teams do if they can't get their running game going. I'm still suspect of Tannehill. I know that there's a lot of mixed opinions about Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
And look, I agreed with the switch. I mean, obviously, Mariota, not isn't too much of a high step when you switch to Tannehill, but he did do some good things. He does bring reliability, and so it's just like I keep going back and looking at these teams. I could never really pinpoint what I think they're gonna do yet, because I think they have a high ceiling for Tennessee. And honestly, I think Indianapolis is in that kind of same situation. Now, the same thing goes with what you were talking about with Phillip Rivers. You don't know what you're going to get out of Phillip Rivers at all.
Yeah.
And to me, Indianapolis, and I know we had talked about it last year, kind of going into the playoffs, like they're a team on the upswing, have an incredible offensive line, keep building on that. Defense continues to improve for Indianapolis. But I really like the division leader right now, which is Tennessee, because they just have clearly better weapons, like you mentioned, in A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. And honestly, I like Tannehill. I would trust Tannehill over probably Phillip Rivers at this point.
Yeah.
Just going towards the end, but then we've almost forgotten the best quarterback in this division is Deshaun Watson for Houston. Really, what Houston's issue is and is still today is I don't know where they're going. And that's what we've talked about since the beginning of the season, really since they've done the DeAndre Hopkins trade. We really haven't understood what is the thought process behind Houston, because this is a team that had a huge lead on the Chiefs. And, if it wouldn't have been for Patrick Mahomes going doing his beast mode in the second half, they would be, honestly, the way that they were looking, I would have picked them over the Titans, because you're just like, for me, I was, you got DeAndre and then you've got Deshaun, looking at that AFC, if we just play it out, looking at that AFC Conference Championship, I really liked what Houston had been doing up to that point, and Tennessee was, a wild card kind of making it through. But the weird thing about Tennessee is they have, like I said, a very high ceiling. I can't pinpoint them week to week with clarity, being like, I really like this week, for example, like they're going up against the Ravens.
Yeah.
I liked them. And honestly, when we go to pick this week, I'm not sure, which of the two teams I'm going to go with between the Ravens and Tennessee. But there's been other matchups, if, we look at, when they blew out the Bills, if I looked at that same game today, I would pick the Bills over Tennessee. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's just, I see the pieces, but they are so inconsistent in what they do right now, or what their identity is Derrick Henry and running the ball. And if it's not there, you see a lot of 3-and-outs from this team. It's a lot of struggle for this team. A.J. Brown, I think some of his injuries have been part of that reason, because we saw at this time last year, A.J. Brown really started to bring it on at the last half of the season. So much so that we were thinking, and I was, especially, I was thinking he's definitely one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and moving forward will be, because you look at the intangibles for A.J. Brown. We talked about DJ Metcalf, and you look at A.J. Brown, it's, same kind of build. Not quite so, not so muscular as DK. I don't think anybody is, but AJ Brown is up there. AJ Brown is up there. This whole AFC South, I agree. Depending on what Indianapolis does, I don't have real confidence that you will see another wild card team from this. But listen, I mean, Indianapolis, I can't they're another team I can't pinpoint right now of
Yeah.
what I think where I think they'll go, what I think they're doing. They've got good pieces. Indianapolis has really good, solid pieces. If they can just figure out the quarterback situation, and a couple other things, and that's where we always go back to what if Andrew Luck could have stuck it out.
Yeah.
If Andrew Luck could have stuck this thing out, I mean, we would be talking Indianapolis as one of the favorites in the AFC. I
Yeah.
personally think.
I believe. Yeah.
And Jacksonville is another team where they have these flashes of where okay they're starting to figure things out, but then they're all over the place. And I know we haven't even touched Jacksonville is a whole nother thing to try and figure out because I think they really wanted to go with Gardner Minshew. When they traded Nick Foles off, hasn't really been paying off for them down in Jacksonville. Houston, they've got a lot of draft assets coming up. So that is the hopeful for any Texan Houston's fans listening to this. And you've got, like I said, the best quarterback in this division is Deshaun Watson. So you've got that, and some other things. But it is like we've been saying, it's a very interesting division. It may not be where we, right now the site that we use they are number 7 overall, so second to last as which it's a little tricky because I think at times, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but the tricky thing with Tennessee is like I think if they can be dominant at times. I mean we've seen that, and then that's what's hard is once we get into the playoffs, what Tennessee team are we going to get? And so this whole division is filled with questions like that. They've got some big matchups this week in particular for the South. We'll be able to see what Indianapolis does against Green Bay and what Tennessee does against Baltimore. So those are two big matchups for the AFC South to kind of see where they're kind of what this team will look like moving forward. This division look like moving forward.
Yeah.
So if you don't have anything else, I guess we can move on to basketball.
Unless
you had anything else to add in.
It's a strong division, but man, it's also weak at the same time. Like the AFC South is just it's a interesting division. To say the least.
It's a little bit of a mess this year because as we pointed out, this could have been last year. You think about the talent in the AFC South.
Mm-hmm.
This could have been an all AFC South championship last year.
Yeah.
I mean, we are a year removed. We are still within a year, months removed to where we were saying, man, and look at that and I still do. I still say look at that Tennessee defense. Look at Derrick Henry, what he's able to do. We're still saying that. But I think what the craziest aspect of this is probably Houston, but the ups and downs of this division. But I definitely I want to, I don't think any team that I can think of, especially if you're thinking wild card game, any of these division leaders are going to say, hey, I want Tennessee. Nobody would be in that boat, So
no, definitely not.
Yeah, so because like I said, they've got weapons. They've got weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So big things going on in the NBA. We've been seeing some moving pieces. I'm gonna kind of save the last one. I think the first piece, I kind of want to talk about is maybe Dennis Schroeder going from OKC and going to the Lakers. It's interesting, I think throughout the playoffs, I think the Lakers were trying to answer, well, who is somebody else besides AD and LeBron that we can go to? And at times, I mean, especially looking at the finals, it sometimes ended up being Rajon Rondo. The problem with Rondo is his offensive game. We're going to get all out effort from Rondo on the defensive side. I think Schroeder was a good pickup for LA just because he can bring you some of that more offensive weapons when you're needing it late in these playoffs pushes.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you had any thoughts about what LA's doing.
I mean, LA's just gearing up, man. This is a team that's going to be at the very least in the Western Conference Finals again. And they're just getting more weapons. They're getting more people that can complement Braun and also take the heat off Braun.
Yeah.
And they're doing a good job. They're building the team, but I feel like they're building this team for the future as well. And that's one thing that's positive because they're gonna re-sign Davis.
Yeah, Anthony
They're gonna
Davis.
re-sign Davis. He's gonna opt out and he's gonna sign a max deal.
Yeah,
That's just gonna happen.
And here's the thing. I mean, some reports says Davis isn't guaranteed. That's hard for me to. Unless the only thing I could say if something happens to LeBron, if something happens, then I wouldn't say that they're getting that deal done. But I totally agree with you, dumping some of their older assets to see like, hey, what do the Lakers look like post LeBron? Because the whole league is having to start to ask those questions. What will our league look like post LeBron? But here's the thing: is I felt like with COVID and everything going on, and Golden State being down, that we had a little bit, teams just weren't at full strength last year. It wasn't like we had bad basketball or it wasn't deserved, like LA didn't deserve it or anything like that. It's just teams were down. You didn't have to face the Nets. The Golden State wasn't a factor. Houston down the line definitely dropped out. So did the Clippers. And so this is going to be, Clippers coming back, seeing what they're going to be able to do. On that other side of the stadium, seeing what the Clippers, respond to, and news of the Schroeder trade. Speaking of Dennis Schroeder, it's Oklahoma is kind of right now in dumping mode, dumping everything they can to get every pick. And so I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts of CP3 going to the Suns?
Man, I love it. A coworker of mine, she is a huge Lakers fan, and I was talking to her about that, because she's always wanted CP3 on the Lakers, and the thing with that was because he was going to play with Kobe, and the commissioner for the NBA was like, no, he canceled that trade, and so. She's always wanted CP3 on the Lakers. I love this. Seeing Chris Paul and Booker play together. I think the Suns are about to go from being one of the worst teams to pretty good, decent team. They're not going to be the best team in the conference, but they're definitely not going to be the worst team. I think that's a good move for him, getting him out of OKC, because that's just a dumpster fire right now. I don't really know what OKC's plans are at the moment, but
they've got.
I like it. I personally like it.
Yeah, they've got. I mean, OKC, from what I was reading, at this point has 17 first round picks upcoming.
Yeah.
So the plan is rebuild, get some younger talent. Anyway, it's not a horrible plan. I mean, I like the fact that the Thunder went all in. If you're gonna do what the 76ers did and trust the process and go all in, I mean, then just go all in and do it.
Do it.
DeAndre Ayton is another player that I like on the Suns. I think with this move, I think what is what was so undervalued to me was actually Chris Paul's play on the Thunder. I mean, you look
Mhm.
at what he was able to do, and he made that Thunder team incredibly competitive.
Yes.
And he's still, is looking for that championship. And so, I I think it was a great move. I know that some, are saying, CP3 is up there, but he
Mhm.
can be a distributor. I mean, and
Yeah.
he's got players on the Suns that he can distribute to. And let's not forget the Suns before their exit were undefeated in the bubble.
Yes.
And so I like DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, and CP3.
Mhm.
I I mean, I realistically seeing this as a 5 or 6 seed in the West
Yeah.
because I think other teams are getting dismantled. The next thing that could really shake and stir things up is the Nets are really pushing hard to get James Harden to team up with Kevin Durant and Kyrie in Brooklyn. So then you would lose power in Houston, which would make room again, once again, for more teams in the West to kind of start to rise up. So getting into that, uh, the Nets are
uh,
trading assets, figuring this out to see if they can get James Harden to team up with his old teammate Kevin Durant again. Now, how crazy is that in the East? That
I
is,
don't like it, man. It Harden just don't play well with others. And I mean, obviously him and Durant have that history together in OKC. And I was also something I was talking about with my coworker yesterday. Can you imagine if OKC would have like pause this real quick. Can you imagine what OKC would have looked like if everyone would have stayed together?
oh
Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
had Durant, you had Russ, you had Harden, you had Ibaka. Like those guys, I think OKC would have won a couple championships if they would have stuck together.
oh yeah,
But Harden, I don't really like Harden's game. Um, and I don't think he'd be a good fit with the Nets. Kyrie's kind of like the wild card in that because I don't feel like he really gets along with anybody. Like he was the guy in Cleveland, and then while Braun was in Miami, Braun comes back, and then he's like, "This is my team," and Kyrie's like, "No, it's not." And then they butted heads while he was in Cleveland, and then Kyrie's kind of jumped around. He went to Boston, didn't work out in Boston, and it's so I don't really. I think Harden, Durant would maybe work, but Harden, Durant, and Kyrie, I don't think it's gonna work.
yeah.
And so I feel like that is more along the lines of like a powder keg just waiting to explode. So I'm not really, I guess, afraid of it.
Well, yeah,
Um,
and here's the deal. I think for me, like my biggest question mark would be Kyrie, and maybe that's
mhm,
what the Nets are thinking if they're able to, get James Harden to really seal the deal on scoring,
mhm,
because Kyrie to me is he can be the most dominant player and yet be the most frustrating player at times when there's shots that he shouldn't be taking at all and he just tries to go,
yeah,
all out and then can shoot 2 for 18 you know.
yeah,
So it's interesting, and I think this makes it interesting for the Giannis decision coming up. If Giannis is going to stay with Milwaukee, or does he move to another East team and pair up, see if they can go up against the Nets? Because if the Nets are able to pull off the James Harden, that's
mhm,
instantly Eastern Conference favorites. And so
yeah,
which would leave other teams because look, I mean Houston is in the same position with OKC, is just dumping the assets and just trying
yeah,
to rebuild from this. What's crazy is it leaves Russ with another rebuild situation,
yeah,
yeah, and it's hard for me to again, Houston in football and Houston in basketball.
Yeah.
It's hard to for me. I can understand the direction of OKC a little bit better than I can the Rockets. I
Yeah.
think if I was the biggest thing for mess up or heartache maybe for Russell Wilson or Russell Westbrook, not Wilson.
Yeah.
Figuring out what his role looks like now on what's looking like if Harden leaves, he may be stuck on another rebuild.
Yeah.
So, the last, thing that also happened was Philadelphia gave up quite a bit to get rid of Al Horford to clear up some space, and they traded to get Danny Green
Hmm.
and Terrence Ferguson. That was actually a good move for OKC because Al Horford, I still, has to me has a lot of game left. It's
Hmm.
just it looks like a move just for cap. So,
Yeah.
because I, I don't like. I think Danny Green's a decent enough guy, but they had to lose a first round pick, to dump Al Horford,
Hmm.
and yeah, I'm not super. I think this works out great for OKC, but for 76ers to lose that first pick on Danny Green, I think it kind of hurts them in the long run.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and I think we'll have to see with some injury news from Klay Thompson because I've been saying this whole offseason, you just got to watch out for Golden State
Yeah.
coming back. But if Klay Thompson's hurt again this season, it'll be interesting to see what Golden State is able to do. So, yeah, a lot of big
Yeah.
things moving, especially for the Suns. There's a lot of moving pieces right now in the NBA, and it's always fun to see what teams are trying to do to combat the big superpowers in the
Yeah.
NBA. So, moving on to our best and worst for the week. So we've just recently, just now talked about, and I'll just, to tie a bow on the end of our NBA talk. Honestly, the best thing I did see was the Suns trading for CP3. I
Yeah.
think it was incredibly smart. I think it's what they need. They need that distributor. They needed another clutch guy near the end. They need another veteran to show them, hey,
Hmm.
this is how you get to the end. This is how you get through some of these playoffs games. And you get a guy in CP3 who is hungry for a
Hmm.
championship. So,
Definitely.
and I can't say enough. Like CP3's performance in the bubble just showed me he's got game.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of game left, and what he did with OKC. So that was the best thing I saw this week. What was yours, Jamie?
Best thing I saw, and I couldn't believe I was typing it, was Notre Dame. They had a big win against Clemson, and then they played Boston College, and they're still playing like the number two team in the country. Because their history, at least as far as I can remember, is they get high ranked, they get all this hype, and then they lose and they fall. And so far, man, Notre Dame is holding on. They're proving, and they played Boston College. Boston College is a 5-4 team, so it's not like they're playing like a top team, but they're proving that they're playing like a top team, and that's been my one critique against Notre Dame in the past is, they benefited from playing nobody, and now they've played somebody. Now, obviously, they didn't have Trevor Lawrence, so but they're still playing like a top tier college football team. And so that was my best. Them holding that spot and proving that they belong where they are. I think was my best this week.
Yeah. Yeah, and my worst for last week that I saw was actually the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
They're big. I mean, to me, it was a big loss that they had against a New England team who had been struggling with injuries, identity, and look, we need to start seeing something from this Ravens team.
Yeah.
that is loaded with talent, that does have a good defense. Like you cannot
Hmm.
just show up for 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 I don't know usually you know and it has been it's like these primetime games, like where are the Ravens?
Yeah.
It's like you can't just keep hype. I don't know if they hype themselves up. I don't know what is going on with the Ravens because they are too good of a team and organization as a whole to not be prepared in these primetime slots. And when you've got a huge, incredible chance to take down Bill Belichick and the New England
Yeah.
Patriots, you gotta show up. And it was just the brief moments I did watch. It just I just I didn't see like where the Ravens were at, and
Yeah.
I think it puts Lamar in a bad situation when the play calling, especially for him at times, doesn't it doesn't match up what he fully match up what he can do, and so I feel bad for Lamar because I think he does in these times where his teams are down trying to figure it out. He does try to do everything he can to put on his shoulders and just make something happen. Good or bad, that's just who he is. And so I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure out like once again this Ravens team is just too good to me to lose to a New England team. To me, besides their coaching, and I know that they'll always be schemed. I know that they'll always be ready. You can't ever
Yes.
count the Patriots out, but you've got to be hyped to play against Bill Belichick. I mean, you have to get all focus, all effort against these Patriots. And honestly, from the times I was watching, just did not see it from the Ravens. So I think the Ravens have a lot of issues right now,
Yeah.
especially if they can't get their run game going, especially if teams are forcing Lamar to throw at times. And look,
Hmm.
I'm a big supporter. I have quietly actually like gone to support more and more what Lamar is doing.
Hmm.
I just don't know if schematically if they can figure out different routes for these wide receivers, maybe shorter routes. Not sure what it looks like for these Ravens to start kind of turning around because once they do, it's hard to stop them once you get these Ravens going. But
Yeah.
in primetime games, I haven't seen it from them. Through
Yeah.
big matchups, the Pittsburgh game, they had it in hand. Pittsburgh was able to come back and win that game, but
Hmm.
they've got to seal these big primetime matchups up. So that was my worst for their week. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the Ravens.
My thing on the Ravens is, do you think people have figured out Lamar? Like he was complaining about how the defense is calling out their plays they're about to run, and it's like maybe you run like that. That's it's not hard to figure out their offense. They run the football, and then they kind of pass, and I would agree they need to come up with routes that are smaller. Like Lamar's not going to beat you with his arm. Like he's just not. He might hit a couple pretty touchdown passes, long passes. He might hit a couple of them, but he's not going to beat you with his arm. So my thing is maybe defenses have figured Lamar Jackson out, and now they have to figure out a different way to win. And that actually I can lead that into my worst, and that's the Titans. Man, they were like the Tennessee Titans were in the AFC Championship last year, and like they're 6-3, they're fine, but they lost. I don't remember who they lost
To
to now.
Indianapolis Thursday night.
Indianapolis, yeah, and they lost very convincingly. Now they didn't have a bad game. Derrick Henry had 103 yards, but it's on both of these teams have to figure out a different way to win. When Derrick Henry can't take the team and put him on his back, you gotta be able to trust Tannehill to lead the team down the field. if Lamar Jackson cannot run all over the defense, then you got to be able to trust him to be able to throw it, or you got to have J.K. Dobbins step up. You got to have these other guys step up to win these games. And the Tennessee Titans and the Ravens are just not, like, they're very one-dimensional, I feel, and it's showing. And I think they both have to figure out this different way to go about and win these games, because just if you just focus on Lamar Jackson, you're playing the Ravens. The Chiefs proves this. If you make Lamar throw it, he can't win. That he does not come back and win games. And that's the same with the Titans. If you take Derrick Henry out of the game, do you really think they're going to win that game? I don't think they will. I don't. As of from what I've seen, I do not trust Tannehill to bring them back, and I don't trust Lamar Jackson to throw his team to a win.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Well, and this ends up being a big question then, because let me double check, make sure this to be the fact. But this week we actually get Tennessee versus Baltimore, so that's a big. So like, you know, to me these teams are very similar. So then we go to the question, like we always do. Who do we like more? Do we like Ryan Tannehill or do we like Lamar Jackson more in this situation?
I like Tannehill more because he can throw the football and he can run. So I would trust Tannehill more than I would trust Lamar Jackson right now. And it's not saying Lamar Jackson's a bad quarterback. The dude's the reigning MVP. Like, he's a good running quarterback, but I don't trust him to stand in that pocket and make a long throw. And his Hollywood Brown even called him out on it. Like, you've got soldiers, but why don't you use them? His people are starting to get frustrated now.
Yeah.
And I think there's a mess. Like, Baltimore, they're I would say a pretty mess right now, because there's still someone that you got to fear. You still got to respect them in every facet of the game.
Because what happens if
on
Lamar?
The inside, they're a mess.
Because what happens, and I think I think under the right coaching, right structure, I think he does figure it out.
Yeah.
Because what happens once Lamar figures it out? It's going to be scary for the NFL.
It's going to be
very scary, you know. And so I mean, it's too. I don't ever think, you know, I don't think he'd ever get to passing wise could ever get to Mahomes level. But there's a level he can still get to where it's a, you know, even more so of a scary matchup for teams, you know, once you get Lamar and Mahomes going. And I don't know. It's tough, you know, this Tennessee Baltimore. I'm still wondering in my mind who I like more. The only thing I like the offensive pieces probably a little bit more on Tennessee. You know, with Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown. Like I said, A.J. Brown is scary if he can get healthy. And Tennessee's got some other weapons too. So I'm kind of leaning with what you're saying. For me, I'm, you know, just quarterback wise. I mean, I'm still, you know, lean a little bit to Lamar because I do think he can figure it out, and I think it's the Ravens got to help him figure it out. His passing game a little more. So so that's a huge game coming up. Huge game coming up, man.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. It's interesting that both of our worsts were the opposite teams, but now we can really answer it who really was, you know, the worst. So so that's interesting. Some other games this week. I'm gonna let you talk a second about your KC Raiders matchup.
Man, all right, Sunday Night Football. You've got, I want to say, man, the opinion is always different. You've got the Packers Bears. You've got the Cowboys and the Redskins. You've got all these, Cowboys, Eagles. Like you've got all these different rivalries. But for me, the rivalry goes back to 1960, and it is KC and the Raiders. It don't matter if the Raiders are in LA. It don't matter if the Raiders are in Oakland. It don't matter if the Raiders are in Vegas. KC and the Raiders are the division rivalry to me. And like I said, you've got other divisions. Like every division has their rivalry, but for me, it's KC Raiders, and it's gonna be going down on Sunday Night Football. The Raiders already got that win on us, man. They beat us by 8. Um, and they the report is they did a victory lap around Arrowhead after they beat the Chiefs week 5. And let me tell you, one team right now that you don't want to make really angry is the Chiefs, and I think
It's
they
gonna be
did
exciting.
just that.
It's gonna be exciting.
You don't. I mean, my personal opinions aside, like act like you've been there. Act like you won a game before. Like who does a victory lap around a place you have not won in 7 years? Like act like you've been there before. But I get it. It was exciting. It was their Super Bowl. Well, now that has to come to an end. The Chiefs Vegas matchup, Sunday Night Football. That is, I want to say it's the game to watch um, this weekend. Tonight, I would like. I'm definitely gonna be tuning into Arizona Seattle. It's another division
Yeah.
matchup. Their first game was amazing. And I loved their first game. Um, so yeah, definitely tune in for tonight, Arizona Seattle. Do you have any that you're looking forward to?
Yes, and once again, disclaimer: if you hear a crying baby or chihuahuas in the background, you're not going insane. But yeah, no, I agree with all the matchups that you talked about, especially in the NFL. Yeah, once again, I mean, we mentioned Tennessee, Baltimore.
hmm
Really, those are the big three I think to watch out for. A little bit of a decent matchup I do think is actually Monday Night Football, Tampa
hmm
Bay versus the Chargers. I think that could be a sneaky good game. Seeing what the Chargers can do to rebound, seeing what because Tampa Bay is going up again against a really good defense. To see if really
Rams.
Tampa, sorry, the Rams, yeah, I don't know why, but
Yeah.
still, Rams have a good defense too. I was thinking
Yes.
Chargers, but let's reverse that for the Rams. I want to see what they're able to do against Sean McVay, see what schemes that they have.
hmm
So I think that's another good matchup. Some college matchups to look out for. The first thing that pops out to me is the Ohio State Indiana game.
Yes.
Indiana is coming out this year
hmm
with some huge wins so far. And this is going to be the first big test for Ohio State
hmm
and maybe the biggest test that they'll face this whole year because we know Michigan's not going to be a test.
No. No.
So, yeah, so that's a game to look out for. Any other than the college games that you can see, Jamie?
I'm definitely gonna be tuning in to OU versus Oklahoma State, and then that's always a good game to watch. They're both pretty good, doing pretty good this year. And then Wisconsin Northwestern, I feel like it's
Yeah,
gonna be a really good game
yeah,
this Saturday. So, but man, that's all I got for
yeah.
today.
Yeah, some great games in the SEC. Seems to be
Mm,
back this week, so some good games coming out of the SEC. I guess one last one would be, I think will be a pretty interesting matchup. Will be Missouri versus South Carolina.
yeah.
That would be a good game to kind of see what teams are able to do in that game. Anyways, this has been the Pipkin and Turnbull show. Definitely Check us out on Facebook. Let us know what you're thinking. Agree, disagree. We want to hear from you.
Definitely.
And thanks for being a part of our community. We will talk to you guys later.